So what are we up to today? First of all, we're going to talk about Pearl, the sequel to X. It's the
That's it.
latest Ty West film, written, co-produced, co-written by Mia Goth, who also is the lead of the film as well. And what a mighty fine lead she is too. Quick whip round for your general thoughts.
I love this movie. I can't remember where I had it. I think it was somewhere, even maybe in the top 10. I'm not certain.
Yeah,
If it wasn't in the top 10, it should have been. I really enjoyed this one. Thought it was really good, especially juxtaposed with the with X, because it's not simply a prequel. It's different in so many respects. I mean, in tone and the way it's shot. It's amazing what they did in terms of how they changed up like so much of what was going on. The aesthetics, the plotting. It's not just another sequel. It's special in many different ways. And I also want to just point out how much I love Mia Goth. She's so great. I have things about to say about her. I have things to say about her when we get to the meat of it. But yeah, I love this movie.
This is a tour de force. Unbelievable. Like, to the extent whereby, is she just fucking nuts? Like, is Mia Goth actually fucking nuts?
Yeah.
I was watching Double Toasted and their review of it earlier today, and they were like, if she took you to the premiere, you'd go to the toilet and run out the door because it was too believable. You'd be like, hey, you can't, no one's that good an actor. Great film, but I'm getting the fuck out of here.
I agree. It was incredible. Blew me away. And at first I thought I watched the movies in the wrong order, but then I realized this one was shot after the other one. And yeah, she was just incredible. And like you said, just so believable. It was like kind of alarming how believable.
Yeah, alarming. In our Oscar shows, we did talk a lot about lead actress because it was the one probably with the most controversy. If you want to talk about snubs, this was a snub. And then, you know how strongly I feel about Andrea Riseborough, like standard iterations above anything that I saw last year.
Absolutely.
Incredible. And let's not forget, for the first half of this film, it's the very prestige-driven period film.
Yes. Yeah.
Set in 1918 with the First World War and the beginning of the Spanish flu. And that was such a clever decision to do that because it was filmed through the height of COVID. So
yes,
all the extras and that could all be masked up, and it was just simply a part of the plot.
I was wondering about that. So this was filmed during COVID?
Yeah, written, directed, produced. Well, they shot them back to back, didn't they? So
yeah,
I imagine with X, what were we talking about on Thursday, Tim? What did I say? Red Rocket, where they only had 4 people in the camera crew, 10 people in the extended crew. You sort of felt that X was done in that kind of way as well. And I think that's probably another way to fit within COVID limitations and restrictions. So how did you think it compared to the first film, Tim?
I actually, oh boy, it's so hard to tell because, like I said, they are very different. The dexterity that Ty West has to make these 2 movies back to back and have them feel so different is so impressive. I love the pastiche elements of this one. I don't know. I guess if I had to, I thought that the first one, X, was like funnier in some way. I think more comedic elements. I love like Jenna Ortega in that one, and the poor boyfriend. That stuff was so funny. I think I probably prefer X, but only slightly for like the comedy reasons. But I think they're both like great. I mean, they both stand alone, I think.
And at the same time, they just fit so perfectly together. They're almost reflective. Some of the shot-for-shot recreations of the barn, the opening sequences, and the way that the adult film that they're making is actually called The Farmer's Daughter. And there's that Pearl and Maxine juxtaposition whereby they're both, they've sort of got this longing desire to make something of themselves. And there's that little crossroads in their 2 stories where she sees the adult film being shown by the projectionist that's taken a shine to her. And then the way that that's reflected, obviously, with the crux of the original film. It's just so clever. When something's deliberately stylized, it immediately makes me hard. Again, on Thursday, we were talking about a truly terrible film, False Positive.
Yeah.
And the way that was very deliberate in what it was doing, but it was deliberately off-putting. Whereas this is very deliberate. And I think you've either got that or you haven't. It's kind of like the difference between people with style and people with money.
It's a good way.
Like some people you could chuck somebody like at a Goodwill and they'll come out looking sick, whereas you can give famous people like £1 million, dollars, whatever, and they'll just look like a fucking clown.
Yeah.
On the look of the film, it had that very oversaturated, Gone with the Wind.
That's what it made me think of. Yeah,
sort of like
Technicolor.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
So,
it looks like Technicolor.
Yeah,
like Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz. Yeah.
With that, the scene with the scarecrow.
Yes, felt like there were a lot of callbacks to Wizard of Oz in there. And her riding the bike too.
Yes, yeah. It has a sincerity to it as well. You fear Mia Goth's character Pearl, but you also fear for her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's weird to feel protective of her and afraid of her all at once.
And that's almost like a path that's walked by all the characters and all the relationships she has in her life. No matter how critical the path becomes, you're still rooting for it in the next relationship that she is obviously going to kill somebody. But you've almost got this weird parental relationship with her where you're aware that she's done some shit, but you always believe that she can do better.
Right. Keep hoping.
I feel like the fact that these were shot contemporaneously too makes it all the more impressive, because in terms of how different they are, it seems to me like you would need, for that to be effective, you make some time to marinate on the first one and really pivot. The fact that they shot them back to back is amazing, and they were so different in that way. I'm just like so impressed by that.
Because the first one almost feels a little bit dusty.
Yeah,
and
it does have that.
And the difference as well with Pearl is that most of the horrific scenes are in daylight and with that bright contrast, and it makes them no less stark or startling. Whereas X was very much your typical 70s slasher film whereby the daytime's safe, but the night time's
right. The darker it gets, the more dangerous. Yeah,
exactly. And then Sunrise, it's kind of like shake hands, like we've just had a game of football or something. Just shake. All right, good game, guys.
Yeah,
right.
See you at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Is the final part of this trilogy going to be called Maxine?
Oh,
do you know? The thing is, I think I'm making eye contact with Tim. I'm literally sat here like looking him in the eye like I'm having a conversation. And he's just sat there like
oh, it's so funny.
No, I am an idiot. I am that idiot.
I don't know. Do you know when it's gonna come out?
I don't, but I mean, it's almost funny that they didn't do all three back to back.
Yeah. Mia Goth, one thing about her, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like her star was rising just as COVID was hitting. You could imagine someone in that position might have interrupted their career, could be like really damaged. The last movie I saw in the theater before shutdown was, I don't know if you remember this, Emma, the latest adaptation of Emma with Anna Taylor-Joy. It's very good. Anyway, so Mia Goth has a prominent role in that movie. I can't remember her character's name, but the best friend. I forget her name in the book. But she's so great in it. I'd never seen her before. You could tell she just is such green presence. You could tell her star was like on the rise. And then COVID hits like literally the week after that comes out. The movie tanks because, of course, no one can see it. You could see how that could have damaged somebody's career, but she's just like right back at it. Such a presence and such a force. She was going to bust through COVID no matter what.
The next film that I want to see what they're in, that I'm absolutely going to make sure I do see, is Infinity Pool. Now, I'm not too sure if it's been released yet or not. It's out this year, and it has another actor whose pedigree pretty much rocketed through COVID, and that's Alexander Skarsgård. Again, it's Brandon Cronenberg. It's supposed to be very weird, very sort of twisted, dark story, and that's all I really know about it. So that one's certainly on the radar.
Good already.
There was something that I noticed during the film. Now, the way she remembers her Harold, her husband returning back from war, but yet she envisages him at the same time dying from a landmine before he returns to the house. Now, the way that she fantasized her husband's death, the way that she fantasized quite viscerally, the scarecrow scene, I noticed that when she murdered somebody and she had all the splatter of blood, especially on her hands, it never interacted any of the props or the scenes or the animals around her. She'd be stroking a goat and the goat would remain completely white. Now, do you think that was a costume production decision, or do you think there could be an interpretation that in actual fact she has fantasized most of what's occurred during this film?
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
I didn't even notice that. Boy.
I did notice that because I was thinking that's definitely going to get on the fur.
Yeah,
and
on the animals.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can't imagine it's an oversight. It's gotta be significant in some way, whether it's
exactly,
metaphorical. Yeah.
Feel that chat now. Shonda Paul. So me go so then.
Or whether it is a clue that, that this is all in her head or something. It's interesting. I don't know.
Potentially a sliding scale, like in a very similar way of American Psycho, where at the end everybody's actually alive, but he has quite the succession of murder up to that point, and then he sees the fellow that he's supposed to have murdered at the very beginning in the final scene, and I've never looked too much into American Psycho, but there is very much that. Maybe it's a degree of both, because in the way that Bateman probably did traumatize the hookers, but was he actually capable of murder? And in the same thing with this, maybe her parents died and she was maintaining them at the dinner table until Harold returned home, but then the rest of the actual murders could have actually been fantasized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally plausible.
Makes me wish they were going back into it instead of, well, I guess it's better though to focus on Maxine for the other movie, but I want more, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And there's so much time between this film in 1918 to the 70s. So it's like another 50 years.
Right.
Yeah. I tell you, the last thing that I'd like to bring up for discussion before we move on to John Wick 4. It's a very special character, and we touched on this earlier. You don't consider them almost a bad actor. You just consider them a troubled person. And I thought there was similarities almost drawn to Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. And again, the lack of symmetry between the plaudits that he achieved compared to Mia Goth in this.
I criticized that movie because... this isn't really about Joaquin Phoenix or Mia Goth exactly, but I criticized that movie because the movie was explicit about the fact it walked the audience through like all the ways in which he was imagining what had happened. I thought that was like maybe a little patronizing. This movie doesn't do that at all. It asks the question and allows you to contemplate. It's like ambiguous in that respect. So I respect that about this movie. Yeah, that's my thought. I don't know if that's the question. That's just what popped in my head.
I watched the other film in the day at the cinema on Thursday, 65, and that falls foul of that with its opening title scene. And then it tells you basically what I imagine would have been a final scene reveal, that this is Earth 65 million years ago and he is a visitor. It's not a hard one to figure out anyway.
No.
It's really not. And just trust your audience.
Yeah.
I think if anything, that was to its detriment, because people would have been talking about it had they not been led to the understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Yes.
No, it's good. I think that covers it. Great movie.